The private jet roared through the night sky, slicing through the clouds like a silver blade. Inside, the luxury cabin glimmered with gold accents, leather seats, and the soft hum of technology. But for all its grandeur, the air was heavy with something money couldn't silence: a baby's relentless, heartbreaking cries. Billionaire Jonathan Hale, CEO of one of the world's largest tech empires, sat rigidly in his seat, his $1,000 suit wrinkled, his face pale with exhaustion. The man who commanded boardrooms, who moved markets with a single decision, was utterly helpless before his 6-month-old daughter, Emma. Her tiny face was red, her eyes swollen from crying, and her sobs tore through the luxurious silence like thunder in a cathedral. "Please, sweetheart, calm down," Jonathan whispered, bouncing her gently. He had tried everything: milk, toys, lullabies, even the soothing rhythm of the plane's engine, but nothing worked. His nanny had fallen ill before the flight, leaving him alone with his daughter for the first time since his wife's tragic passing just months earlier. Across the aisle, passengers sighed, groaned, and exchanged judgmental glances. Some muttered under their breath, annoyed that their peaceful flight was being ruined. A few even recorded discreetly, ready to post a clip titled, "Billionaire can't control his baby," for the world's amusement. Jonathan felt his chest tighten. Shame burned his throat. He'd faced reporters, critics, competitors, but this was worse. This was personal. He didn't know how to comfort his own child. Then, from a few rows behind, a soft voice spoke up. "May I help, sir?" Jonathan turned, and his eyes fell on an elderly black woman seated by the window. Her clothes were simple: a faded floral dress, worn shoes, and a small canvas bag resting on her lap. Her silver hair was neatly braided, and her face was lined with the wisdom and weather of years. Her eyes, however, sparkled with warmth and something even rarer in that cabin: compassion. He blinked. Thank you, ma'am, but she's been crying for hours. Nothing seems to help." The woman smiled gently. "Sometimes, babies don't need fixing. They just need to be heard." Before Jonathan could reply, she rose slowly, steadying herself against the seat. The flight attendant looked nervous, intervening with a billionaire's child wasn't standard protocol, but Jonathan nodded. "Please," he said softly. The woman extended her arms. "May I hold her?" For a moment, Jonathan hesitated. He wasn't used to trusting strangers, especially with something so precious. But Emma's cries had turned hoarse, her tiny body trembling from exhaustion. He finally handed her over, carefully, as though surrendering his last shred of control. The moment the elderly woman cradled Emma, something miraculous happened. The baby's screams faltered. Her sobs softened into hiccups. Within seconds, the cabin grew silent, so silent that even the hum of the jet felt sacred. Passengers turned, astonished. Phones lowered. Whispers rippled like a breeze through the quiet. Jonathan's mouth fell open. "How did you?" The woman didn't answer right away. She just held the baby close to her chest, humming softly. It wasn't any song Jonathan recognized, just a low, soulful hum that carried the weight of old stories and deep love. Emma's tiny hand gripped the edge of the woman's dress, her breathing slow and peaceful for the first time in hours. Jonathan felt tears prick the corners of his eyes. Something about that sound, something about the way the woman looked at Emma as if she were her own, shattered him. He sat down quietly, afraid to break the magic. Minutes passed. The woman rocked gently, still humming. The baby slept. Jonathan leaned forward. "That song. What is it?" She smiled faintly. "It's an old hymn from my grandmother. She used to sing it to the babies in our town back in Georgia. Poor folks didn't have much, but we had love. And that was enough to quiet even the loudest cry." Jonathan nodded, his throat tightening again. He stared at Emma, sleeping peacefully in the arms of a stranger who seemed to know exactly what she needed. "You're amazing," he whispered. I don't even know how to thank you. The woman chuckled softly. You don't have to, son. Babies can feel what grown-ups forget: love, calm, peace. You've been carrying too much sorrow in your heart. She feels that. Jonathan froze. Her words hit him like truth wrapped in kindness. He hadn't spoken about his wife's death to anyone. He hadn't cried. He hadn't stopped working. The moment she was gone, he buried himself in meetings, deals, and mergers, anything to escape the pain. The woman saw right through him. Grief has a sound. Mr. Hale. Your little one's been crying with you, not against you. He looked down, his hand trembling as he brushed his daughter's cheek. I thought I was protecting her by staying strong. Sometimes, the woman said, strength means letting your heart break. The words hung in the air like gospel. Jonathan bowed his head, finally allowing a tear to fall. He hadn't realized how much he needed to hear that, from anyone. The rest of the flight passed in peaceful silence. The woman continued to hum occasionally. But mostly she just held Emma as if she were something sacred. And Jonathan sat still. Not as a billionaire. Not as a CEO. Just as a father rediscovering what love really sounded like. When the plane landed, Jonathan rose and turned to the woman. Gratitude shining in his eyes. Please, he said earnestly. Let me repay you somehow. Anything. You've done more for me and my daughter than anyone ever has. She shook her head slowly. I didn't do it for thanks. Just promise me you'll hold her more often. Money can buy comfort, but it can't buy connection. He nodded, speechless. But as she started to gather her bag, something inside him refused to let her walk away. Wait, at least let me drive you home. It's the least I can do. The woman hesitated. That's kind, but I'll take the bus, son. Jonathan frowned. Bus? No, please, I insist. Finally, she relented, and they exited the plane together. Outside, the billionaire's chauffeur stood beside a gleaming Rolls-Royce. The driver's eyes widened slightly at the sight of the old woman. But Jonathan shot him a look that silenced any judgment. During the ride, they spoke quietly. Her name was Mrs. Lillian Harper. A retired nurse who had raised 3 children and lost 2 of them to illness. She volunteered at a community center, teaching young mothers how to care for their babies. When the car stopped at her modest neighborhood, Jonathan looked out the window and saw cracked sidewalks. Small houses with peeling paint, but also children playing. Laughter echoing through the evening air. It wasn't wealth that filled this place. It was life. Mrs. Harper turned to him before stepping out. You have a gift, Mr. Hale. Use it to heal, not just to earn. And don't forget, sometimes the poorest hearts give the richest love. Jonathan's voice broke. You've given me more than you know. As she disappeared into her small home, Jonathan sat in the back seat, holding his daughter close. She stirred but didn't cry. Instead, she placed her tiny hand against his chest, right where his heart still ached, and smiled in her sleep. He looked up at the sky through the tinted window, whispering, "Thank you." The next morning, headlines around the world buzzed. Not about a billionaire scandal or a crying baby, but about a viral video. Someone on the plane had captured the moment when the poor, elderly woman calmed the billionaire's baby. But what captured hearts wasn't the act. It was the caption she had unknowingly inspired. Money couldn't buy peace, but love gave it freely. The video amassed millions of views. People were moved, inspired, and humbled. Jonathan, instead of denying it, embraced it. He issued a heartfelt message online, acknowledging the moment and announcing a new foundation in Mrs. Harper's honor. The Harper Foundation for Mothers and Infants in Need. He didn't do it for PR. He did it because that one woman, on one night flight, reminded him of something he'd forgotten, that humanity is what makes us rich, not wealth. In the weeks that followed, Jonathan visited Mrs. Harper often. She became a part of his and Emma's lives, a grandmotherly figure who filled their home with warmth, faith, And the kind of love that never asked for anything in return. And sometimes, late at night when Emma cried again, Jonathan would hum the same old hymn Mrs. Harper once sang. His voice wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Because this time, his heart was open. The billionaire who once ruled boardrooms now ruled his daughter's heart, and that, finally, made him the richest man alive.